Good evening viewers, welcome back to my channel Literati. Today I will continue with the lecture I had uploaded a few days back, which was part 1 of my views or my insights on the love song of J.Alfred Prufrock by T.S.Eliot. I will continue with the lecture and I will try to analyze the entire poem today. The poem, which is in 140 lines and which is the signature poem which marks the beginning of the modern age in English poetry. From the very first beginning, you and I signifies the split personality of the protagonist, J.Alfred Prufrock, the modern everyman, and the representation of the disintegration of the modern man who lacks harmony in his life and in his self. This poem represents the modern man in his personal hell, as the link is established with the epigraph from the Inferno, from Dante's Divine Comedy, where the two damned souls in purgatory are expressing their doubts and their uncertainty. Self-doubt, lack of confidence, and a lack of belief. This is the single most malady of the modern man, the anti-hero, who is not heroic and who is not noble, but who is like a damned soul trapped in the modern day hell. We had completed the first 3 stanzas and we have witnessed the doubt and the despair of J.Alfred Prufrock. He is lacking in confidence, he is isolated, he is a split personality, his entire self is that of a fragmented person. You and I are the 2 aspects of his split personality, the private self racked by doubt and the public face which he prepares to put on in front of everyone. Self-conscious, lacking in confidence, filled with a sense of inferiority and isolation. The love song of the modern man is not full of hope and romance and a confidence, but rather it is an expression of the isolation and the loneliness and the duplicity which one lives, a life of duplicity, a life which is lacking in any harmony. The first stanza depicts the moral sickness which is expressed in the famous image of the evening sky spread across like a patient etherized on an operating table. A shocking image which shocked the sensibilities of the reading public when this poem came out as a part of collection of Prufrock and other observations, which depicts the modern man, the modern day protagonist, as someone who is navigating a situation which is very difficult for him. He is not in a secure world. There is a complete lack of balance and any beauty in his life. The external surroundings in the second stanza, the external surroundings, the drains, the smoke coming from the chimneys, the soot which falls from the industrialized world, it all seems to emphasize the darkness or the lack of beauty in the world J.Alfred Prufrock, or the modern day Everyman, inhabits. In this stanza, that is in the second stanza, there is also a clashing of images where the smoke which seems to swirl around the ground, lifting itself up, rising and moving in a harmonious pattern, almost musically, to some invisible music. It is described poetically and almost rhythmically. It is expressed, or it is compared to the sinuous movements of a cat. And at the same time, the protagonist, though momentarily distracted by the beautiful and the graceful movements of the smoke rising up, falling down, swirling across the houses, the corners of the houses, and lifting up and moving, rubbing against the window panes. He is momentarily distracted, but then again, his self-doubts come back to haunt him. And in this stanza, the two images, the image of the cat, of the smoke described, compared to a cat, and the soot and the smoke and the drains, they seem to clash together. But there is almost a poetic moment when the modern protagonist looks at the moment and he is enchanted. But then his reality, this reality of the sordid world which he inhabits, not only the public world but also his private world, comes back to him with a renewed force. And the consciousness of the passage of time, eroding his youth, taking away his life bit by bit, minute by minute, is evoked very powerfully. There is a repetition of certain phrases and certain words, which is a poetic device by T.S.Eliot, because we have seen this is a constant, this refrain which he tries to build up in his poems is a kind of, like I said, poetic device. At the end of the first stanza, we have heard the words, in the room women come and go, talking of Michelangelo. These lines, 13 and 14 lines, are repeated again after the end of the second stanza in lines 35 and 36, creating a world of opposites where J.Alfred Prufrock is conscious of his inferiority and the world of refinement with which he feels alienated, and this is the world of women talking of Michelangelo, an image of sophistication and beauty. There's a constant repetition and emphasis on the word time. There will be time to prepare a face to meet the faces that you meet. There will be time to murder and create, and time for all the works and days of hands. Works and days of hands are the hands of the clock that lift and drop a question on your plate. Time for you and time for me, and time yet for 100 indecisions, and for 100 visions and revisions before the taking of a toast and tea. So there's murder and create, murdering his feelings and suppressing and crushing his feelings of self-doubt, and trying to build up, boost up his confidence, trying to create an image, a false image about himself, that of a confident person, while in his mind, in his soul, in his spirit, he is a broken man. He does not have any strength, any self-belief, and he is overwhelmingly conscious of his own inferiority. He is totally lacking in any confidence about himself or any belief in his own qualities. Then the refrain on lines 35, 36, in the room the women come and go, talking of Michelangelo. And the repetition of the word time, the emphasis on the passage of time, underline J.Alfred Prufrock's consciousness of the passage of time. And in this poem also, we see there is a constant movement. There is a continuous movement. Though we come back to the same point again and again, back to the modern day unheroic hero of this love song, of this saga, we come back to the same point of him being conscious and aware of his own inferiority. The fourth stanza again begins with the refrain or the repetition of the emphasis on the passage of time. And indeed there will be time to wonder, do I dare, and do I dare, time to turn back and descend the stair. This indecision is killing him. He tries to procrastinate, he tries to put off the moment, and that is why he says in the second stanza, there will be time to ruminate, to think over it, because he's afraid of rejection. He cannot dare to ask that question. He wants to go over it again and again, and every time it fills him with a fresh despair and a fresh doubt. And in the third stanza, when he says there will be time, once more he tries to will himself to ask the question, but he lacks the courage because he's afraid of rejection. He's so conscious of his own inferiority. And this self-consciousness is expressed in this stanza when he says, there will be time, let me put it off, let me think over it, let me decide, let me wonder if this is the correct time. Should I put up this facade of a confident person and be poised and talk in a normal fashion, take the toast and tea, the evening ritual, try to behave normally. But at the same time, he says, when I will put off that moment and turn back to go, people will notice how I am aging. The bald spot at the back of my head, my thinning arms and legs, and they will despise me, they will snicker at me, they will mock me, and they will, on the whole, look at me pitifully and condescendingly. This is J.Alfred Prufrock's own sense of inferiority and his own self-consciousness, which makes him feel that way. But then he has no respite from his self-doubt. There is nothing which he can believe in. There is no encouragement. He is constantly full of a pessimistic self-doubt. It has eroded his confidence. He cannot believe in himself. So in the third stanza, and indeed there will be time, again that emphasis, to wonder, do I dare, and do I dare, time to turn back and descend the stair with a bald spot in the middle of my hair. They will see how his hair is growing thin. And he says they will mock at me, and they will laugh at me, and they will snigger at me, and they will notice my bald hair, the bald spot at the back of my head. They will notice the fact that I'm no longer young. My morning coat, my collar mounting firmly to the chin, my necktie rich and modest, but asserted by a simple pin. They will say how his arms and legs are thin. Do I dare disturb the universe? In a minute there is time for decisions and revisions which a minute will reverse. And he says there is this sense of uneasiness, this feeling that he is unsure of himself. He is conscious of his appearance, in spite of the fact that he is dressed suitably. He has got on a necktie, he has a formal coat, clothes are expensive. He has dressed up properly in order to boost his morale, but that is not enough, because he cannot push off the thought. He cannot push away the thought of his own inferiority, his own lack of confidence, his own self-belief. And so he says, though not ideal, at least I'm inhabiting this world. Should I ask that question? Will it disintegrate this flimsy world in which I live? It is not comfortable. He is not happy. He is filled with isolation. He is alienated from his surroundings. He has no peace of mind. But at least he has not exposed himself to the world. And so he says, do I disturb the universe, this flimsy, this uneasy, this discordant world in which he lives? So how should I presume? And he said, conscious of my own lack of qualities, my own ordinariness, how should I presume? How should I presume that my question will be met with a positive response? And it is this fear of rejection, because he is not someone young, dashing, confident, on the top of the world, as let's say, the earlier romantic cavaliers of literature, which was written in earlier times, those heroes who had this nobility, who had this grandeur. He is an ordinary, puny, and a very, very inferior person. He is conscious of his own lack of any quality. He is a person who is fragmented, who is disintegrated, who is leading a double life, trying to appear what he is not. And then the construction of this poem, we should understand, is uneven. So the refrains, and there's no particular pattern in this poem. So the first three stanzas are followed by not only the refrains, but also stanzas of unequal length. Because this kind of disjointed construction, unevenness, was also a commentary on the lack of any pattern in the modern life. Then in this stanza, in the fourth short stanza, which is followed by the fifth short stanza, and then again stanzas of varying lengths, we again hear the voice of our protagonist, because this entire poem is in a dramatic monologue. It has a kind of pattern of the voice of a person, and the patterns of the thought follow a stream of consciousness method, one thought leading to another, some thoughts coming back, intruding again, then going back. Like I said, there's a constant movement back and forth, and often and again, wherever the thoughts lead, they come back to the same point, that is of the consciousness of one's inferiority. For I have known them all already, known them all. This line, I have known them, this kind of trying to convince himself, is again repeated again and again. Because here we find that J.Alfred Prufrock is trying to boost himself up, trying to find courage from some thought, some belief. For I have known them all already, known them all, have known the evenings, mornings, afternoons. I have measured out my life with coffee spoons. I know the voices dying with a dying fall beneath the music from a farther room. So how should I presume? And then the protagonist says that this is how I have led my life, in a nondescript manner. I have nothing to show for the hours, days, weeks, months, which I have spent. I have measured out my life in coffee spoons. This image which defines his life, or through which he expresses how his life has been nothing but a waste. There is no residue. It has been measured out in coffee spoons. It is over. It is finished. There's nothing to show for it. His life had been so predictable, so mundane. He has not achieved anything. He has just sleepwalked through life. He's measured out his life in coffee spoons. There is nothing remaining, and all the days, the weeks, the months, the years have passed him by, and he has led his life almost like someone who has sleepwalked through life. And the sound of music from a further room, again an image of beauty which seems to be remote from his life, just like the image of women coming and going, oblivious of his presence, not even noticing him, and talking of Michelangelo. And I have known the eyes already, known them all. Again the refrain, the repetition. The eyes that fix you in a formulated phrase. And when I am formulated sprawling on a pin, and when I am pinned and wriggling on the wall, then how should I begin and spit out all the butt ends of my days and ways? And how should I presume? A repetition of the words, how should I presume? Almost poignant. He said, how should I presume that I will be successful? I have nothing to show for my life. My days have been like the measuring out of each moment in coffee spoons. Nothing has remained. My days are like the butt ends of the cigarettes, discarded. I have been just a person formulated and pinned with a label. I am so and so, with a name, and I am fixed in a spot like an insect wriggling there, unable to escape this persona which society has bestowed upon me, or rather this personality which I have built around myself, that I am J.Alfred Prufrock. I am a person, nondescript, ordinary. My life has been mundane. I have lived a very pedestrian life. I have not achieved anything. I have not witnessed any beauty. I have not faced or seen or experienced any moment which can be called a moment of enlightenment. My life has been just a series of moments, of days, of weeks, of months, of years. I am someone who is easily forgettable. Nobody will remember me. There's nothing to show. There is nothing about me. I am a nobody. Only I have a name which is like a label, which is like pinning an insect to the wall. And once this label has been fixed on me, I cannot escape it. But is that label enough? What have I seen in this life? This life has been a waste on me. It is like the discarded butt ends of cigarettes. There is no substance. I have not achieved anything. I have not witnessed anything. I have not experienced any beauty, any moment, any enlightenment, any experience of truth and magnificence. Again, this stanza, the next stanza, opens with the same line. And have known the arms already, known them all. The first time it was repeated, it was for I have known them all already, known them all. All means the people who surround him, but at the same time, this loneliness, because he is alienated, he's so afraid of ridicule. There is such a lack of understanding that he cannot express his deepest emotions, his personal agony, the torment which he is going through. And then, and I have known the eyes already, known them all. And then in this stanza, and I have known the arms already, known them all. The eyes, the arms, the people, the way the people look at him blankly, as if they just see him, but they do not have the time or the interest, or they do not recognize him as a person. He is an individual, but that is lost because nobody is interested in him. He is so ordinary in his own eyes that he knows that there is no redeeming feature about him, and the eyes look at him blankly, looking at him without really recognizing his emotions and not really caring. People are uncaring, indifferent to him. Nobody cares. And I've known the arms already, known them all. Arms that are braceleted, white and bare, but in the lamplight downed with light brown hair. Is it perfume from a dress that makes me so digress? Arms that lie along a table or wrap about a shawl, and should I then presume, and how should I begin? And then he is tantalized momentarily. There is the beauty of the woman which distracts him, just like in the second stanza, the sinuous and the graceful movements of the smoke had enchanted him and reminded him of the beauty of life. Similarly, the almost seductive description of the arms and the graceful way the arms braceleted and white and bare, and that almost physical sexual quality of the description when the arms are down with light brown hair which are visible in the light, and the beautiful arms wrapping around a shawl which again enchant him, tantalize him and attract him. He is filled with a desire to ask the question, but then as he is assaulted once again by his feelings of uncertainty, by his lack of confidence, by his consciousness of his inferiority, and afraid of rejection, he says, how can I presume? How can I ask this question? This beauty, this loveliness, the music from the further room, the beautiful arms lying on the table in such graceful postures, they seem to be beyond me, beyond my reach. And then he says, how should I begin? How should I presume? Do I even dare to presume? He says, do I dare? Do I dare? He has been pushing off this moment. And now he says, when the situation is staring me in my face, should I presume? Should I ask? Should I believe? Shall I say, I have gone at dusk through narrow streets and watched the smoke that rises from the pipes of lonely men in shirt sleeves leaning out of windows, and I should say I should have been a pair of ragged claws scuttling across the floors of silent seas. And he says, the poet says, or the protagonist says, he is charmed by the beauty. He is tempted to ask the question. He wants to. That desire is very strong in him. But along with the desire comes his fear of rejection. And once more his reality overwhelms him. And he says, should I presume? This question answered again and again almost achieves a poignant quality. And then again that awareness of his reality of lonely men in shirt sleeves. This is again a commentary on the industrialized world, of the urbanization of the world in the early 20th century. The men living in identical factory housings, in single rooms, spending the evenings staring out of the windows, with no company, no friendship, too tired to go out. And the narrow streets of the crowded cityscape of this very rapidly industrialized rapidly industrialized world, which was becoming the reality of the modern world. The lonely men in shirt sleeves, that is in the evening when they come back from the long hours of the factory, leaning out of the windows, lonely, alone, isolated, and the description of the smoke that rises from the pipes. Again, an image of the industrialization, of factories, of pollution, of the images in the second stanza are kind of going back. Like I said, there's a movement in this poem. There's a constant movement forward as well as a movement backwards, which creates a kind of connectivity because it comes through the refrains, the repetition of the lines, as well as the repetition of the images. So in the second stanza, there were the images of the factory world, of the soot, of the drains, of the smoke, and that image is repeated here again, of the narrow streets, of the lonely men, of identical factory housing. And here, after the protagonist is reminded of his reality. And in desperation, again very famous image, he says that I should have been a pair of ragged claws scuttling across the floors of silent seas. That is, the image is one of a crab moving sideways on the ocean floor, because that world is silent. And J.Alfred Prufrock is surrounded by people. He is in a world where there's so much noise. There are elements of beauty as well as discordance, the music, loveliness of sophisticated women, feminine allure, and at the same time, as contrasting with it, is the noise and the cacophony of the modern world. But his own personal world, in his mind, he is so isolated that he feels as if he is in a silent world, like completely cocooned in himself, like the silent world of an ocean floor. There's a pause here, and then the musing or the words or the voice of the unheroic hero, the modern protagonist, the modern everyman continues. And the afternoon, the evening sleeps so peacefully, smoothed by long fingers, asleep, tired, or its malingers. Stretched on the floor, here beside you and me, should I, after tea and cakes and ices, have the strength to force the moment to its crisis. And then, after the pause, there is a sense of serenity in the description of the long evening, almost sensuous, smoothed by long fingers, stretched on the floor, here beside you and me. You and me, again, the two aspects of his split personality. There is almost a seductive charm here in the description of the stretched out day, slowly deepening into evening, and a sense of serenity which he wills himself or forces himself to feel, tries to push away his doubts and his conflicts and pretend that all is well with him. So after the evening tea and cakes and ices and the conversation and the pretensions, he asks himself, should I force that moment to its crisis? Should I ask that question? Should I dare? Should I disturb the universe? Should I begin? Do I dare? And do I have the strength to accept the rejection if there will be a rejection? Should I force the moment to its crisis? And thinking to himself, he is, again, that is his conflict, that is his spiritual agony. Again the agonizing thoughts, again the painful thoughts, again the self-doubt come back to assault him. And he is trying to muster up the courage. Should I force the moment to its crisis? Because the evening seems so serene and peaceful and the time seems ideal, but he cannot push back his thoughts. There's agony which comes back to torture him again and again. But though I have wept and fasted, wept and prayed, though I have seen my head grown slightly bald, brought in upon a platter, I am no prophet, and here's no great matter. I have seen the moment of my greatness flicker, and have seen the eternal footman hold my coat and snicker, and in short, I was afraid. And then, in the last line, he is brutally honest with himself. And he says, though this evening, this serenity, this conversation, this evening ritual of cake and tea and ices, it seems to lull me into a sense of self-belief. Is this the reality? Because I have gone through a lot of suffering, purgation, wept and fasted and prayed. This actually means, it has a symbolic meaning, which means that I have tried to muster myself. I've tried to go through a spiritual tortures, a kind of self-sacrifice, so that I can get some answers. But I am no prophet. I do not have that strength to go through purgation and enlightenment. I am just an ordinary person. And the startling image of his head being brought up on a platter, almost in a ritual of sacrifice, and his consciousness, once again, of his lack of any redeeming quality. I have seen the moment of my greatness flicker. And he says, I have achieved nothing. And now he is conscious of the time, of the end of his days. The eternal footman. Footman is the person who shows the guests out of the door. And we are guests in this world. And the eternal footman, that is death, he is holding out my coat for me to go and make that final passage, leave and snicker, because my time in this world is over and I have not lived my life. I have neither experienced beauty nor any kind of ecstasy, or in short, my life has been a waste. The eternal footman is the image of death, which snickers, because this is something which is the undeniable truth. And this footman death will be the final truth which will put an end to my days. But his sorrow is that his life has been a waste. And would it have been worth it after all, after the cups, the marmalade, the tea, among the porcelain, among the some talk of you and me, would it have been worthwhile to have bitten off the matter with a smile, to have squeezed the universe into a ball and rolled it towards some overwhelming question, to say, I am Lazarus, come from the dead, come back to tell you all, I shall tell you all. If one settling a pillow by a head should say, that is not what I meant at all, that is not it at all. And in this stanza, the poet says, I will, even if I don't ask the question, I will be filled with this confusion, this doubt, this question in my mind. What would have been the end if I had asked that question? If I had disrupted the harmony of the world of porcelain and tea and marmalade and toast and small talk and polite conversation, decorum, manners, would it have disrupted, and would the world have disintegrated in chaos if I had asked the question? But like everything else in my life, this moment has also passed me by. I have failed to grasp it because I did not have the courage. My life is a failure, and I let this moment go because I did not have the strength, the courage, the self-belief, the confidence to ask this question, and I was already filled with a fear of rejection. This rejection I felt would destroy me completely. So I have failed even in that. I have failed to ask a question. My life has been a failure, and I was not like Lazarus. Lazarus is an image from the Bible, and Lazarus was someone who, Lazarus of Bethany, he was known as Lazarus of Bethany, a righteous Lazarus. This appears in the Gospel of John, and Lazarus had come back from death to reveal the final truth. So here the image of Lazarus contrasts to the very absence of truth in J.Alfred Prufrock's life. He is not certain of anything. He does not have the courage to ask a single question, a simple question, a question which should have come to him naturally, but he is the modern day protagonist living in the modern day hell, a world of agony, despair, isolation, self-doubt, loneliness, and a fear of failure. He says, I knew that the possibility of one settling down, her head beside my pillow, finding love, companionship, understanding, sympathy, and compassion was not my destiny. She would not settle by her head on a pillow beside me. That was beyond my reach, like everything else in life. The tragedy of the modern man, his failure, his agony, his loneliness, and his deep unhappiness. And would it have been worth it after all? Would it have been worthwhile after the sunsets and the dooryards and the sprinkled streets, after the novels, after the teacups, after the skirts that trail along the floor, and this and so much more? Is it impossible to say just what I mean? But if a magic lantern threw the nerves on a pattern on a screen, would it have been worthwhile if one settling a pillow or throwing off a shawl and turning towards the window should say, this is not it at all, that is not what I meant at all? And in this stanza, again the sorrow and the confusion of his life come back to haunt him. And he says, I did not have the courage to ask that question, but I will spend the rest of my days wondering if I had asked that question, and would it have been worthwhile even the rejection, or would she have accepted him, or would she turn away from him and dismiss him and left him with a rejection which would have accentuated his sense of failure. But what would have happened? Whatever would have happened, would it have been worthwhile for him to ask that question? So this is very tragic, sorrowful, the unhappiness of the modern man, his fear of failure, his rejection, which is stronger than any other feeling, where he cannot even win a common thing like personal happiness, where he does not have any courage or self-belief. Then there is a pause, and again a very, very poignant image, and very powerful, very evocative, very expressive, one of the most beautiful images in English poetry, which is so eloquent and which seems to speak volumes. It has an image which has a great depth and which again emphasizes the fact that J.Alfred Prufrock feels that he is a nobody. He's a non-entity. His life has been without any significance. His life has been without any meaning. He has not experienced the beauty, the joy, the pain, and the agony, or the ecstasy on a level of grandeur. That is the tragedy, that is this complete ordinariness. This image is from Shakespeare's tragedy, Hamlet. No, I am not Prince Hamlet, nor was meant to be. I am an attendant lord, one that will do. To swell a progress, start a scene or two. Advise the prince, no doubt, an easy tool. Differential, glad to be of use. Polite, cautious, and meticulous. Full of high sentence, but a bit obtuse. At times, indeed, almost ridiculous, almost at times, the fool. This stanza is a statement on his life. Like I said, very poignant and with a great depth of meaning. He compares his life or himself to someone pitiful, someone easily forgotten, somebody barely noticeable. He says, I never had the heroism or the grandeur or the tragedy experienced by Hamlet, the tragedy of epic proportions. You need to have a nobility of spirit to experience that. You need to have a grandeur of mind and soul. I had none of these. I was too ordinary. I was just like one of those sidekicks, one of those very nondescript people who are a part of the general scheme of the general world, the world of drama, the world of reality, or any place, any space which is crowded with more important people. My job was just of an attendant lord, just someone who stood there, maybe given a sentence or two to speak, not missed by anyone, not noticed by anyone, full of a sense of passivity and conscious of my own abject quality, the fact that I was a nobody, at times the fool, at times ridiculous, obtuse, sometimes trying to puff myself up, but on the whole, absurd. My life is a statement on absurdity, on meaninglessness. I grow old, I shall wear the bottoms of my trousers rolled. And then the poem ends on the note of pain, sorrow, self-consciousness, consciousness of the passage of time, waste of life, and the waste of his own life. I grow old, I shall wear the bottoms of my trousers rolled. And J.Alfred Prufrock cannot escape the fact that he is now an old man, and with each tick of the second, the passage of the hands, he is growing older. He will never grow younger, and no matter what he does, he cannot escape the inevitability of age and the fact that his life has just been a journey through wasteland. Shall I part my hair behind? Do I dare to eat a peach? I shall wear white flannel trousers and walk upon the beach. I've heard the mermaids singing each to each. I do not think that they will sing to me. And he says that my life will be spent on just asking myself these mundane, inane, pointless, meaningless questions. I have missed that moment like everything else. I have missed that moment of reckoning. I did not even have the courage to face that moment, no matter if I had been rejected. But I am so lacking in any substance, any self-belief, that I am like the hollow man, which T.S.Eliot has written another poem on, which depicts men as hollow, shaken by the wind, with their heads full of straw. And J.Alfred Prufrock is someone like that, just a hollow man, without any beauty or majesty in his life or in his personality and his consciousness of this fact. And so now there's nothing but regret. in his life. He says, now the rest of my days, I grow old, will be spent on asking myself these questions: whether I should part my hair, whether I should roll the bottoms of my trousers, whether I should wear a white flannel shirt, because I have missed that moment of reckoning like everything else in my life. And then the line, a sense of finality, when he says that the mermaids are an image of beauty, of romance, of loveliness, of imagination, of poetic quality to life, which he has never experienced. So he says, the mermaids will not sing for me. I have seen them riding seaward on the waves, combing the white hair of the waves blown back, when the wind blows the water white and black. We have lingered in the chambers of the sea by seagulls wreathed with seaweed, red and brown, till human voices wake us and we drown. And we drown in our own misery. So the mermaids have also been a part of the dream. He has seen them, but they have been remote. They have left. He could only see them going from a distance. He has not experienced that magic, that beauty, that loveliness, that, like everything else in his life, he has let that moment go, and now the rest of his life is how he has lived in loneliness, in isolation, in regret, in pain, and with a sense of futility and with a sense of emptiness. So this is how this very important poem in modern literature, because this is a signature poem marking the beginning of the modern age in poetry, with its images, with its expression, with the motifs, with the new kind of sensibility and the new kind of emotion which has come in with the publication of this poem. Earlier it was called Prufrock Among Women, and later the title was changed, and it was a part of a collection which came out in 1917 and which was known as Prufrock and Other Observations, a collection of T.S.Eliot's poems. We have seen all the characteristics of T.S.Eliot's poetic style and images which he brings in from different sources. Here we have the images from Shakespeare, from the Bible, because, like I have said, in keeping with his beliefs which he has expressed in tradition and individual talent, he has implied the fact that literature of the world is an ongoing tradition, and this is something which can be related to all his poetic work. He says that there should be a historical sense, there should be an awareness of the ongoing tradition of which each writer is a part. And he says that each poet, each writer, quotation, has affinities, quotation, with his or her immediate predecessors. Immediate predecessors will be in quotation, quoted from tradition and individual talent. And there are differences as well as similarities. And each writer should be read with a sense of his importance, or the sense of the fact that he is part of a tradition. And tradition is not something dead and gone, but it is something very much alive, which informs the present. And again, T.S. Eliot says that each poet writes not only with his own generation in his bones. In his bones is a part of quotation from tradition and individual talent. And he also says, or these famous words which are used by many other critics and writers are, quotation, a historical sense, quotation closed, which means that the poet should feel that the history or the tradition in literature is something which he should always return to again and again and always be conscious of. So this was the second part and a complete analysis of the love song of J.Alfred Prufrock. Kindly read it in continuation with part 1. This is part 2, and please leave your comments and your insights as well as your questions in the comment section. And please like and subscribe to my channel Literati for more uploads on various other topics of English literature. Thank you.